Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to Gender Speaker Live. It's been a bit of a challenge today trying to get things together, so starting a little tiny bit late, and we're going to be looking today at why we need gender training in the workplace. Hi, and welcome. Oh, what an awful day it is today. Raining all day long after such a lovely day yesterday. Here we are. Autumn is here, and we're talking about, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, sorry, a couple of things not working here this evening. Anyway, here we are talking about training and why we need to put gender-based training into the workplace. Essentially, what I'm saying is, do men and women work differently? Do we need to actually help men and women to understand that, and things are different? Men and women work differently, and therefore we need to be thinking very much about operating on a very different basis. I think we do. And I've run a number of training courses on this, and I'm going to talk through some of the ideas that I think we need to start to look at a lot more carefully to understand what's happening in the workplace. Now, one of the courses that I run is on unconscious bias training, how to manage those biases. And those are very, very different for men and women. Our biases are the result very much of socialization, of the way in which we're brought up. But those biases are also impacted and affected by, for example, the way we manage stress. They're managed by our ability to handle stress, and that's very different. I noticed driving down the road something very odd. If I see a man and a woman about to cross the street and I'm driving down towards them, more often than not, if there's plenty of room, the man will just walk out and almost look at me with a sort of glance that says, "Don't you dare hit me," and walk across. Whereas a woman will stand back and wait until everything's actually safe and clear. And it's that risk taking. So our biases are impacted by our sense of risk. Now, if you look at car driving, you'll find that men tend to have accidents at much higher speeds than women. Women also have less accidents, but when men have accidents, they're often at very high speeds. Women will have a lot of minor bumps, you're hitting the curb, bumping something in a car park, those sorts of things. Whereas men will tend to be much higher, and men have an ability. And we can see this men's spatial ability is a little bit better than women. And that's probably biologically developed over thousands and thousands of years, because men have been hunters. That's been the primary role of men. Women have hunted, but in the main, it has been the males within tribes that have been the hunters that have gone out, and they have developed the ability, much greater upper body strength, therefore much better ability at using spears and weapons. And we just look through history, we can see that men have been the ones that have hunted, have fought, and used that upper body strength in that. But it means that men also are very, very much more focused. Men have to focus entirely on what's happening. If you're in a hunt and you're trying to kill an animal, the focus needs to be there. If you're in a battling with somebody, you can't be worrying about what's happening to everybody else. You need to be focusing exactly on your goal, your target. And that, we find, seems to be borne out by the fact that there's a greater level of connectivity within a woman between the right and left sides of the brain. And what that means for women is that they have a much better awareness of what's happening around them. They have greater peripheral vision. And that's probably reasonable, because women are very often protecting children, protecting family. They're in social groups, and so they're consciously aware all the time of what's happening all around them, and they need to be men much more focused. Those are some of the. Now, I know I'm going to get into all kinds of battles if I'm not careful here, because we start talking then about the differences between men and women. Are they biological? Are they nurtured? What's happening? It's not one or the other. Like so many things, it's not about a gender binary, it's male or female. No, the differences are a bit of a spectrum. It's a bit of a grey area of differences. When we're looking at unconscious bias, the Harvard implicit association test, I use that with get people who are attending the course to go online, and before they come on the course, actually check out their biases on a couple of things, whether it's to do with LGBT or whether it's men and women. And I was quite surprised that when I did the test, I still associate women with the home, men with work, because it's been so ingrained into me. And kids, by the time they're 2 or 3 years old, I've got that. It's actually in there. They know the sort of stereotypical roles of men and women. And this is the problem, that when we're talking about the differences between men and women, this is one of the other courses I run, working together, different working styles of men and women. Immediately, this is all about stereotypes. It's stereotypes about women, and trans women get attacked a lot because we tend to stereotype a particular style of female behavior. And I did it when I changed gender. I was 50, and suddenly I was out clubbing, out late. I was dressed up in high heel shoes and short skirts and bags of makeup, and mutton dressed as lamb. But it's like, every woman went through this at 16, 17, 18, out on the town, having a good time, dressing up. We get over it. I got over it. I got older. I realized, it wasn't working. But it was fun, and I enjoyed the fun. So all stereotypes are true. We do go through all these stereotypes. Yeah, women like to dress up, like to look good. Women spend a lot more time on clothing and makeup. Not all women. This is the whole thing. Stereotypes are true, but not for everyone. There are some women who hate makeup. There's some women who absolutely wouldn't catch you in a skirt or a dress if you paid them. Yeah, it just don't like. That's not their style. That's not their way they want their life to be. There are men I know who love dress. I know plenty of guys who are drag queens. They love dressing up. And somebody asked a drag queen friend of mine, "Why do you do this?" And he said, "I love it. That's it. I'm good at it. I look gorgeous," he said. And that's it. He loves to dress up, loves to look absolutely stunning and amazing in a dress. So stereotypes are true, but not for everyone. And we have to allow that there are differences in people. But when you start to look at working together, there are some underlying differences. Now, some of them seem to be inherent, essential differences that appear to be hardwired in as a result of something that happens in the womb. And that's maybe why, and that's why I believe that I grew up feeling I should have been a woman, because my brain got hardwired more female than male. Tiny little differences, difficult to actually pin it down. Was it about socialization? I don't think so. I was one of 4 children, boy, girl, in our family. My brother, there's nothing feminine about my brother. He's definitely man's man, and that's the way his life has been. So this is what we've got to think about. Stereotypes are true, but not for everyone. But when you start to look at behaviors of men and women, there are some things that are clearly different. Now, I said on Monday, I've been listening to a really good book, Why Women Don't Ask. It's all about negotiations and why women don't negotiate. And part of that, I think, seems to be an inherent difference in the way that women are compared to men. Women are biologically engineered to support, because that's the nature of a woman's role. If a woman is going to have children, she will take care of the children. And by the way nature is, it's no good saying, "Oh, well, men should take over." Yet men aren't physically constructed in order to provide the care that a child needs in those first couple of years. That's a job which is going to be handled mostly by women. And we're changing our society, and we're getting men a little bit more interested in childcare. But essentially, there's an instinctive nature in women to take care of their children. Not all women. I have plenty of women friends, haven't had children, don't want children, wouldn't want children. So one of the differences that came up in this book is this idea of the fight or flight responses. Stress results in a fight or flight response. And it's something we've just accepted. That's the natural way it is. Yeah. when they're stressed, the saber-toothed tiger arrives. Oh, you fight it or you run. Now, some years ago, not that long ago, about 10 years ago, two women researchers looked at the research that had been done on this, and they discovered that 90% of all the research done on fight or flight responses had been conducted by looking at men. And in fact, in some cases, they had eliminated women from the study because the women's results seemed to be out of line with the rest of the results. So they removed them because they were messing up the figures. Great, there we go. So these women started to look a lot more at how do women manage stress, and they identified that there is a chemical the body produces called oxytocin as a result of stress, and oxytocin has a calming effect. It actually counters the fight or flight response, and this oxytocin's effect, this calming effect of oxytocin, is actually magnified by estrogen, and it's actually reduced. The effect is significantly reduced by testosterone. So what that means, so get that right, so it's magnified by estrogen. And what it does in women particularly is blocks the fight or flight response and results in women tending to go for social support, looking for help. So if women are under stress, they're more likely, and this was actually noticed in the particular lab where these women were working, what they said, if women under enormous amount of stress will come in and clean and tidy the office, sit down and bond and have a chat and talk things out with friends, whereas men will disappear off on their own and basically into the man cave, disappear. So what we're seeing is differences in the way in which men and women respond. So that's the purpose of looking at that. I think that when men and women are working together, we need to look and understand what those are. I find it one of the problems about men and women working together, obviously, is sex invariably gets in the way. And I've worked in a few companies where there was an absolute rule, no relationships in the office, because they caused unnecessarily. It took people's mind off the work. It caused all sorts of stress with it. If people are going out and then they fall out, and it creates a huge amount of additional emotional problems within the office, which don't help the productivity in the office. So keeping relationships out of the office is often a very good idea. So the other thing I've looked at is social styles. And a lot of people have come across this. I've been on so many different courses looking at this, and it's one of those topics that really fascinates me. It all started with Hippocrates way back 2,500-3,000 years ago in Greece, and Hippocrates came up with 4 different social styles, and the names of which I've now instantly forgotten: phlegmatic, colic, sanguine. I've forgotten the 4th one. But anyway, he came up with those 4 styles, which were really, from a health point of view, he was looking at it. In the 19th century, Carl Jung picked the same theme up, and he started to look at them. And then I came across it because Timothy Leary, of the famous Turn On, Tune Out and Drop Out in the 60s, a psychologist, he'd been looking at social styles in the same way. Then Larry Wilson developed Wilson learning, and then the DISC process came. There have been so many different organizations have done this now, and I'm sure you've taken a test at some point where you filled it in and you've got something back to tell you what your personality is, and it's generally based upon the same thing. 2 intersecting conditions. We're looking at assertiveness and we're looking at responsiveness. How assertive are you? To what extent do you tell people what to do? To what extent do you tend to ask and go along? And responsiveness is how people orientated are you? So you've got people orientation and task orientation. And what's interesting is that when you look at the statistics around this, there's a much higher number of women who are people orientated than men, and there are far greater men who are task orientated. And we just find that it splits very distinctly that way. And the task orientated people tend to be in engineering and senior management and such, like very highly focused, whereas the people orientated people tend to be in marketing, public relations, caring society. And if you look at the way work splits out, that's where we are. Despite all the attempts to shift women into construction and manufacturing and mechanical engineering, more are now doing so, but it's still not a primary choice. Whereas if you look at caring, we've got 70–80% of caring staff are female. The problem with all of that is not that women tend to go towards caring professions, men tend to go towards manufacturing and construction. It's that we pay people in the caring professions so much less than we pay people in manufacturing and in the task-orientated jobs. Which is odd, isn't it, when you think about what we've been doing over coronavirus, out there clapping for the NHS. And here we are with this second wave now, almost inevitable, and huge amount of pressure being put on people in the caring, people in the NHS, now going to be putting their lives at risk again, trying to save and help people. And they're still not going to be paid huge amounts of money. We might stand out and clap for them again, but we're not going to pay them to do this. And yet everybody's been going nuts because they can't go to work and earn their money in the task-oriented jobs. I'm not going to get into the battle on that, but can you see where we got social styles? It's very clear that there's an orientation by women one way and by men another, and we need to understand those differences and how we can work together more effectively. And of course, then there's the whole issue of people who are trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming. And gender non-conformity messes with people's heads a bit, doesn't it? You go into work and suddenly you're faced with someone who isn't presenting gender, isn't acting, isn't speaking, isn't behaving in the way that you expect for someone who is a man or who is a woman. And it creates all manner of discomfort. So how do we learn to handle that? Best way is to get awareness training, help people to understand why these differences exist. Why do some men like to express themselves in a very feminine way? Why do some women like to express themselves in a more masculine way? And trying to help to understand that. So that's basically, what I'm saying here is we need to be looking at training and understanding that increasingly now we have a workforce which is balanced between men and women, but it's still very unfair. Men tend to earn more than women, and there are a whole bunch of reasons why, most of which is because men start off negotiating for a higher salary right from the beginning, and women tend not to. And the interesting thing on that is that if somebody negotiates on a woman's behalf, then everybody will start off the same. What women have more difficulty with, it seems, from a lot of the research done, is that women have much more difficulty negotiating for themselves, even if they are in their profession primarily negotiators, so judges and lawyers and people, policy makers, people who are doing organizing. The word's gone right out of my head. But people who are negotiating deals all the time, women who are salespeople, they're constantly negotiating on behalf of someone else. And they don't have a problem with that. In fact, women can sometimes be the better negotiators when they're negotiating for somebody else. All sorts of research been done checking this out. But the moment a woman's negotiating for herself, seems to capitulate, take a lower deal, take a poor deal. And women invariably end up not getting the right income in jobs, not getting promotions, not getting pushing their own careers ahead because they find it difficult. And that appears to be something that is actually inherent in the way that women engage with other people. All a bit challenging, all a problem. So within the workplace, I think it's make sure you have a look. Now, I've got a transgender awareness course going on the 20th October. That's just going to be looking at the differences about why people are gender variant, gender non-conforming. Why are we different? What's causing that? And what you can do in the office to make it more fair, to get rid of that exclusion or that tendency to exclude people who are different. How can we make trans and non-binary people and LGBT people generally more included within the workplace so that they feel more comfortable, feel part of the team? That's what it is. I'm doing this on a basis that you pay what you can afford. I'm suggesting a minimum of £20 per head. It's a 2-hour workshop. Very interactive, lots of questions afterwards. I'm happy to hang around afterwards. I'll be answering any questions. I can deal with individual people who've got specific personal questions within their office. Perfectly happy to handle that. But it is a good interactive workshop. I'm shifting it from the live person-to-person environment into the online environment, and I've had to make some changes. I'm still in the process of making some of those changes. Each time I run a course, I'm finding something different that's beginning to work, learning from all sorts of people. So do come along. It will be a great event. 20th of October is that one. You'll find the details if you just look down in the entrance at the bottom in the details about this program. You'll find a link there. Click on that and you'll get to the Eventbrite where you can book on the course, and I look forward to seeing you there. Tomorrow is the first of my interviews. I've got 3 set up at the moment. I'm trying to get a couple more set up. Kat Burton, I don't know if you remember, Kat was in the news quite a lot some years back because Kat was the first female pilot for BA. And also the first pilot to change gender while on the job. So Kat's going to be talking a little bit about the challenges and issues that she faced changing gender in BA. She no longer works for BA. Kat's retired from being a pilot. Well, I'll say she's not actually retired from being a pilot because now she teaches people how to fly. So join me tomorrow, 4 p.m, when my guest will be Kat Burton, and I'm looking forward to that. For now, have a fabulous evening in this rather murky, damp. I don't know whether it is where you are, but it's a bit murky and damp here. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we'll have a great chat with Kat. Thanks for being with me. Take care. See you tomorrow.